Try that again.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Splendor session. Very happy to see everybody. This is going to be 3 weeks of red teas. Have a lot to talk about. Really looking forward to delving into red tea. Now, let me answer a question that I received late last night, early this morning. And this is applicable to any of you who have clay pots and something happens unexpected. So you make tea, you get distracted because a favorite cousin calls you and you leave the tea in the pot, and you leave it there overnight, you don't drink it. Is your pot eternally finished? And the answer is no. So there's just a couple things that you need to do, and you do them in this order, you'll be just fine. So immediately discard the tea leaves that you left accidentally in the pot. Zero problem. Put in the 200 or 212 degree water and rinse it out, and then put it in again and let it sit there for about half an hour. After that, you should be essentially okay to move forward with the pot. And unless you notice anything specifically different about the pot, then that's the rules of how to handle that sort of an accident. All right, so we've taken care of, in quotes, a tea emergency. And now let's talk about what we did here at the shop this last week. This last week was exciting. We had, I told you that we had 40 new samples come in. But when we actually counted the number of samples, it was closer to 50. And then I had forgotten we had a couple other boxes of samples, much smaller numbers. So we actually covered about 70 samples this week. So this made this a very busy, very interesting week for us. The great news for all of you is China is still producing great tea. And for those of you who've been worried that maybe we're losing interest in green tea, this is a false rumor. We've already, out of this batch, selected 10 new great and interesting green teas. For those of you who love the red teas, there's stuff that we are going to get, not stuff, but there's tea that we're going to get that in terms of uniqueness, it's every bit as unique as Dreamscape. So we have some really, really interesting stuff coming in. We have some more white teas that we've ordered. So all of you probably have one question in your minds now that I have gone down this route. So when is it getting here? And that's a fair question, except when you're in the COVID world. When you're in the COVID world, you know, light doesn't travel the same speed as it's supposed to travel. Nothing behaves. All the physical laws of nature and all the laws that govern great tea don't seem to apply and behave in the same way. So I'm hesitant to offer an answer to that question because unpredictable, truly unpredictable, because we've seen some weird things happen in terms of stuff getting held up, in terms of stuff coming faster than expected. So everybody knows in China, who we're dealing with, that the tea drinking public here is thirsty and in a hurry. And I've conveyed that sensibility to the Chinese, and we'll see what happens. So we'll let you know as we get more information. The other thing is, this is not the end of the number of samples that we're going to get. We have more samples that will be coming. And in fact, we estimate that there's probably another 30 to 50 more samples that will come to us over the next couple months. Why is everything so spread out this way? It's spread out this way because some samples truly aren't ready till later in the season. It's also spread out this way, particularly this year, because sometimes the farmers have to pick themselves. They can't get pickers into their villages just because of the COVID situation and limitations on travel and moving around. There have been some really strange, by tea standards, strange things that have occurred in terms of availability of workers to help pick. Everybody within villages, of course, is trying to pitch in and trying to make things happen. But when farmers, on average, are used to having 12 workers, and you've got a whole village worth of farmers who can't get the workers in, all of a sudden, what you're able to actually produce is going to be reduced. Not only that, you have the other sad thing, which is, okay, what if it's the adjacent village and the workers are able to walk across the line, so to speak, and come in and pick and so forth. And so as a farmer, you're thinking, whew, dodged a bullet. Okay, I'm going to get this all picked. I'm going to get it produced. Oh, wait a minute. It can't go anywhere because no trucks can come in and pick it up. Oh, and wait a minute. I'm the type of farmer who doesn't actually have my own production facility. I have to ship this out to a production facility 20 miles away. How's that going to happen? So there's a lot of discomfort with the logistics, and we're all feeling that all over the world. Here we're feeling it, every place is feeling this, and particularly in China, where some of the places have been closed off, there is really a hardship that's developed in terms, quite frankly, it's an economic hardship because you're not able to get that cash flow, you're not able to get the production, and even if you do get the production, you can't get the cash flow for it. So everybody's working around that, and at some point we'll get through this, but for us and for you, let it be known, we are getting through it, and we're going to have some great stuff coming. All right, let's talk about Splendor. So Splendor comes from Yunnan province. It is Fengqing, and Fengqing is almost like a county. It's an administrative district, and it's about an hour outside of Kunming, and it's an hour to the east of Kunming, actually to the southeast of Kunming. And it's about a 4-hour drive from Ningsan. So this is this administrative area that's been famous in China since the 30s. 1938, remembering that the Japanese came into central China, or they started their incursion into central China in 1937. At the end of 1937, start of 1938, the main tea producers in Anhui made a decision, and this is north central China, made a decision, and they're the ones that are famous for doing Chima needle, starburst, those type of really fine teas, vortex. They decided and ordered their key agricultural scientists to look around the country as far away from Anhui as they could get and see if they could set up plants for producing tea in other areas, particularly the red tea. And so Fengcheng was the place that these scientists settled on. Why did they settle on Fengcheng? Fengcheng, the climate is subtropical. That's one advantage. Lots of moisture, lots of water availability. The soil is very rich, and there are already existing tea trees in that area. So you know tea can grow. And you know from the tea trees, because they analyzed, and they went all over Yunnan, by the way. And there's lots of different places to go in Yunnan. Yunnan, from a tea growing perspective, to this day, is still not completely explored. And it's really amazing because some of the villages are so remote. Oh yeah, they're producing tea and they're using ancient tree stock or old tree stock. And it's really, really good tea. But does it go anywhere except the village or the neighboring village? The answer is no. And so scientists and researchers who are at institutes, tea institutes in China, are still discovering new pockets. So this is what this scientist was really trying to do. Discover a pocket that could be exploited for growing new teas there. The other aspect of what they were trying to do was to make sure that it was remote enough so that the Japanese, it would either take them a long time to get down there or they'd never get down there. So again, when you think of what the mindset was in the 1930s, fear was driving everything, because the Japanese had already proven in Northeast China that they were kind of ruthless. And as soon as they entered Beijing, it was like, oh my gosh, all bets are off for all of China because they're on the move. And so the Chinese in key manufacturing and agricultural areas started looking around. How do I protect my investments? How do I move stuff? How do I continue to have some economic footprint with what I'm doing? And so this is why these people ended up in Fengcheng. Now, listen to what I just said. 4-hour drive from Linsang. And that's today. That's not in the 1930s. In the 1930s, given the state of roads, given the state of who was sharing the roads, and given the state of the actual cars themselves and trucks, this is probably a 6 to 8 hour drive at that time. So again, from the Chinese point of view, that's the scientist's point of view, great place. Tea exists here already. Soil, we've tested the soil. pH is good. Our tea leaves will grow here. We're going to bring some down from Anhui. We're going to also use local varietals, and we're going to get up and going. And it took them only a year to produce the first crop. Half of it was green tea, half of it was red tea, and they used a jungle route to get it out eventually to Hong Kong. So they were really efficient, amazingly so, given the wartime conditions in China. And the Japanese really never entered this area. By the time they were thinking of this area, they were already losing the war and probably sensed that they were losing the war. And so they had to be careful in how they distributed troops. So this area continued during World War II producing tea and experimenting with tea. So this is where splendor comes from. Now, when we talk about tea regions, especially red tea regions, what are we thinking about in China? We're thinking about Fujian. Why are we thinking about Fujian? Because Tungmuguan, we've talked about that in terms of smoky pine, golden sweetness. That, oh, also on divine plum, that is an area where they make really fancy red teas. They have, and they call it Gunfu Red Tea. And this Gunfu Red Tea has nothing to do with Gunfu Cha in the sense of small cup. No, that's not what it means. It's more a generalized term, Gunfu, meaning master, highest grade. So they did highest grade red tea, remembering that in the 1700s, one of the leaders of a red tea plant in Fujian went back to Anhui. Anhui was his ancestral home, took some of the varietals that they had from Fujian back to Anhui. Anhui already had lots of tea, lots of rich varietal stock to choose from, and there they established the red tea industry in a big way. Fujian was never able to satisfy British and continental thirst. The Anhui, the movement to Anhui was a result of wanting to take a very fine technique for making red tea, move it to Anhui, and then because the land and the amount of varietals was more there, they thought that they'd make a bigger create a bigger footprint and be able to export more, go home, become rich, and live famous. And essentially, that strategy worked for a few years until the British got India to start producing tea. So, whole fascinating history. And while we're talking about red tea, as we go through the red tea, we are going to be in Yunnan and Anhui. So today is about Yunnan and specifically about Fengcheng. Let me clear up one other thing, and the tea master is already telling me to make it a quick clear up, and that is there is terminology that you see on the internet, so we know it's true. You see in stores, and you see something called Dianhong, D-I-A-N-H-O-N-G. So Dianhong simply means a red tea, the hong is red, from Dian. Dian is a local name for Yunnan, and that name's been around for ages. Historically, that name was around 150 BC. We have texts, and really that Dian referred to Dianchi, and Dianchi is the big lake outside of Kunming, or within Kunming. It's that huge lake that's there. So it's that Dian. So you see that in stores, on the internet, and there is the assumption. I don't know how many times we've dealt with people who've said, oh, yes, I want Dianhong, as if it's one single tea. It's a category, not a category, but a class of teas. It's the red teas that come from Yunnan. And I checked to make sure, because somebody asked me, does the Dianhong really refer to only Fengcheng, or does it refer to all the red teas from Yunnan? And as it turns out, it really refers to all the red teas from Yunnan. So this suggests that maybe in Yunnan, pre-1938, they were doing red tea. And the answer is yes, they were doing red tea in Yunnan. And actually, in the 70s, in the 80s, and in the early 90s, whenever you went to a tea shop at the airport in Kunming or any of the other airports in Yunnan, they'd have one of these tea shops, and red tea or dinhum would be a primary product that they were selling. It was only at the start of the 90s that the fermented teas started to become a big thing. And they went from a big thing to a fad, to a decline, and now back again to a big thing. So that happened later, although the tea was being made, true fermented tea has been made a long time in Yunnan. It was the red tea which had everybody's attention. All right, so it's time for me to ask the venerable tea master to come and demonstrate first how to make Splendor and then to make it with you. So without further ado, let me bring in Xiaobei, tea master.
Tea master here. Tea master here.
Good morning, Xiaobei.
Good morning. 早上好 everybody. 早上好 Yeah, good morning. So I use a Chinese word. 早上好 We do home cha. So American call, the red. I call home cha. But we don't call, the black tea in China. It's called home cha. So this tea from the Fengqing in Yunnan is famous. Yeah. So I really like this area. So we do home cha. Okay. So just come here with me, please.
So we're going to go through the normal setup exercise. The rules for this are 5 grams, which you already have in the pre-measured in the package, 175-degree water, and the first steeping is 3 minutes. So remembering that you're going to dissipate a little steam when you start out. You're going to make sure both receptacles are heated properly. These are the rules for efficiently doing and producing the best taste of the red teas.
The question on the samples, are the samples from different farmers or are farmers altering their recipes?
This is a great question. So the questioner is wondering, are the samples from different farmers? The answer is yes. Every single sample is from a different farmer. Do the farmers alter recipes? This is a more complicated question. The answer is some farmers alter recipes, but when you say alter, that's a generic word. And so let's be a little bit more specific. Every farmer, every great farmer who's producing high quality tea changes or alters the recipe according to that year's terroir. Terroir being really, in this case, the climate situation that they've experienced during the course of a year. No farmer is going to get out the red tea, Betty Crocker's book on red tea, and follow a recipe like that. Not going to happen. The great farmers understand, this year it rained late, this year we had snow late, or something else occurred. And so the result is that every single year, farmers are doing something a little bit different. So if that's what you mean by altering the recipe, the answer is yes. Okay, so she's heated both cups and she's taking the tea, putting it in the heated cup, and she's going to shake that. And what you're trying to do is wake up the leaves, so to speak.
Splendor of the old or ancient variety?
Yes, so the questioner asked, is Splendor old? In other words, is it one of these things that came down from Anhui, or is it something that was existing in Fengqing? Something that was existing in Fengqing. All right, and you notice she adds the water on the edge. And one of the things you first notice right away when you're thinking about this, oh, yes, we're setting the timer. One of the things you notice is that these buds are extremely long, very, very long. And so why is that? Are they growing them differently in Yunnan? Is this a genetic predisposition of Yunnan? The answer is yes and no. The tea in Yunnan that's local varietal, by and large, all of that, whether it's a tree or bush, the leaves are enormous compared to tea in other parts of China, particularly Fujian. So that's what you're seeing out of this particular tea. It's nice long leaves. Now, when we talk about style of processing, and we're going to notice this over the next couple of weeks, some processors go through a lot of extra steps, some stay more basic. Typically in Yunnan, though not always, they stay more basic. How do you as a consumer know whether they've stayed basic or gone highbrow? And it's through the use of the term Gunfu. If it's a Gunfu Red, there's usually more steps involved. So what are the steps? Well, you gotta pick the darn stuff, and you gotta pick it at the right time. And what is the right time? Well, it's the time it's not raining, it's not overly foggy, it's the time when you actually have people to pick. All of those things, very, very important. When you pick, not only do you have to decide what pick, is it a bud and a leaf, a bud and 2 leaves, or a bud and 3 leaves? And how do you make that decision, by the way? Well, a lot depends on what the plant tells you. If the plant is telling you, oh my gosh, these buds are looking really good, and you know that the market is good for buds, oh, we'll pick buds this year. We'll do the other stuff later. Or if the buds didn't come out well because late freeze or some other climatic situation occurred, strong winds through, all sorts of different sorts of climatic conditions can occur to damage the tea leaves, then you make another decision. Once you've made a decision, then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to wither. And great farmers use a combination of outdoors and indoors. Usually, obviously you can't wither when it's raining or there's any other sort of precipitation, heavy fog. By the way, that was 3 minutes. Timer has gone off.
Is it important or helpful to dissipate steam on the second and third brews as well?
Yes. And so the question is it important or helpful to dissipate steam on the second and third brews? Yeah, absolutely is. Remember, every time that you are able to slightly reduce temperature through this technique, this is going to end up being a good thing for you because the tea leaves like a little bit less aggressiveness on the temperature. This is not oolong tea. And you notice it's brewed uncovered. Very important. So you look at this color. This is the color in a minute that yours should look like. Just totally beautiful. And then let's look at these leaves. Oh, a lot of buds. Long. Let's smell them. Remember, this is done at 175 degrees, so we are able to take a more careful smell. Still careful is the operative word. And instantly, there's something I smell here. Right instantly, you're going to tell me. All right. Love that smell. Hope I taste what I'm smelling in here. Let's see. Remember, when we're first tasting, we're entering the quality arena. What are we trying to determine in the quality arena? We're trying to determine what the feeling is on the mouth, what the feeling is on the tongue. Is it dry? Is it dense? Is it viscous? Is it buttery? All of these things we're trying to decide. And when Shabe and I are testing stuff, we're going through this every single time, because if it isn't meeting standard, I don't care what the aroma is. It's not getting in here. Remember, you're also looking for aftertaste and then energetics. What are energetics again? Energetics are how the tea makes you feel. And there's lots of terminology out there about energetics, but it's very specifically a physical feeling that you're left with the tea. All right, so let's try. So you notice I can take a larger sip because this isn't 200 degrees. I am not going to burn my taste buds. This gives me an opportunity to fill my mouth more and get more of a total sensation. Once I go through this quality assessment, and this feeling about energetics, then I turn my attention. Okay, I get a lot about this tea. Now, tell me, tea, how do you taste? What's the aroma? And then, what's the aftertaste? I'm greedy this morning. I'm going to take one more sip. It's your turn. So the tea master setting up her tableau. Your tableau should already be set up. Your water should already be 175 degrees. You should have already put 3 minutes on the timer. And pretty quickly, after you warm up and finish playing with the water, your cups will come to temperature. Now she's using 200-degree temperature to warm up the cups. And the reason to do that is, again, you want to wake up the leaves. You want to make sure that the cups are absolutely clean. No soap stains, nothing left in the cup except the ability to give you that pure tea flavor and aroma. All right, so she's drawing 175-degree water. And then Tea Master is going to dissipate the water, dissipate the steam structure, what I call structure. And remember, are we traveling at Superman speed here? Are we in a race? The answer is no, we're not in a race. And all of you don't have to worry about, oh, I got to be at work at 10 sharp and it's already after 10. No, this is, you do it deliberately. It's tea rhythm. You take your time. You get into that space so you can fully appreciate this tea. All right, you get your bag out. Bag number 1 should have the word Splendor on it. And you're going to take the leaves and pour them into the heated cup. And you're going to shake the cup. You're going to establish a baseline by smelling, and then you're going to pour the water on the side of the cup. And then you're going to set your timer for 3 minutes. Okay, so we remember, I've already picked the tea, and I'm going to wither as a farmer. And withering indoors and outdoors, depending on what the actual climatic conditions are that you're facing. Outdoors, for the really experienced farmers, is more comfortable. It's better. They believe they get a better quality. By the way, science doesn't necessarily dispute that, because there's been scientific studies about this. And from a flavor perspective, farmers who know how to control an outdoor wither at a high level seem to produce the best tasting tea. However, you can still produce very, very good tea by an indoor wither. How does an indoor wither work? It's a machine. It's as long as this counter. It's got these gigantic holes in it. Well, not quite that large, about this size. And they blow air. There's a compressor at the end. It blows air, and the leaves jump up and down. And the farmer can look in, pick up the leaves. Oh, okay, it's about this level. What are you trying to do? You're trying to reduce moisture. How much moisture do you want to reduce? You want to reduce anywhere from 40 to 50% of the moisture in the leaf. And why in the world are you doing that? Are you what? You're just giving yourself time to relax and so forth? The answer is no. You cannot roll the tea leaves without having them fall apart unless there's less water in the leaves. So you notice I use the word roll. That's the next step. After you have withered to a sufficient degree, and remember, by and large, these farmers, because they are crafts people themselves and they're doing this by hand, they're not measuring. Oh, okay, 41 degrees, not 41% less water. No, they're not doing that. They know from experience. They pick up the leaves, they smell. That's the first indicator. Okay, it's this way. They feel the leaves a little bit. Oh, okay, this feels like about a 36, 37. That's how they're doing the measurements. Now, in the huge factories in India, Kenya, Sri Lanka, yeah, they've got real measurements there. They've got thermometers. They got the whole works there. That's not what's going on at the Chinese farm. Instead, at the Chinese farm, they got the whole experience there. And they're using experience to tell them what they should do. All right, your timer should have gone off. And you notice you're not in this huge hurry. Just very deliberately. You're appreciating the aesthetics. And you're separating the tea from the tea leaves from the tea liquor. And you're doing it in a deliberate way.
Steeped leaves have a scent of malty chocolate with a hint of ocean.
Love this opening comment. The commentator used malty. That says it all alone right there. Then they modified it. And how did they modify it? They said, hey, chocolate. And anytime you use the word chocolate, that means it's good, right? Now, those of you who don't like chocolate, you don't need to mention to me that. I know not everybody likes chocolate. And then a hint of ocean. So this is an umami-ness that is being referred to here. And that maltiness, we'll talk about that in coming sessions, because there's a definite relationship with withering and how you end up with that maltiness.
Oh no, I smell stone fruit. We've never disagreed before.
I love this comment. Yes, and we're not in disagreement. We've got stone fruit in there as well. Yes.
The smell of the dry leaves has a large smell of a sweet and tangy berry of some kind.
A sweet and tangy berry of some kind. Love that description. Almost the best of, for those of you who've ever had really good boysenberries, oh my God, your description immediately made me think of that.
Dry leaves have a scent of honey. I'm looking for it.
A scent of honey in the dry leaves. And all of you are using terminology that's very connected. So berries, honey, sweet, tangy, a little bit umami. Hey, we're in good company here.
Someone else is also getting a sort of grassy hay smell from the dry leaves.
Okay, I love the fact that you went first and smelled the dry leaves. Grassy hay-like smell. All tea, not all tea, but many teas have that grassy hay-like smell when they're dry, particularly when they're dry and unheated. Can you smell, and this is a rhetorical question, so no need to answer, can you smell down beyond that with dry leaves? It's very difficult. But Xiaobei and I, when we're testing all the tea leaves, we take those dry leaves before we've heated them. And we kind of know from experience what an aroma is likely to end up meaning as a final tea liquor. It doesn't always correlate though, so we're always careful about that, but we do go through that judgment, and I love the fact that you all are starting to do that as well.
That smell of the heated tea leaves lasts in the wet leaves. Sweet, tangy, and a bit warming.
Sweet, tangy, and a bit warming. So this commentator is commenting on the smell of the heated dried leaves, and when you make that transition into the wet leaves, you know what? There is some sense of uniformity there. You know, sometimes when you smell the heated leaves, and then when you smell the wet leaves, and then when you taste, this is different tasting than what the leaves are projecting. But not in this case. This case, the leaves project. And how do they project? Project uniformly. So right from the start, you're getting, oh, this could be sweet. Oh, there might be a little honey, a little fruity. All of that is there. And then when you actually drink the tea liquor, it's really all in there.
And the smell gets sweeter as the leaves cool down.
And the smell gets sweeter as the leaves cool down. Great catch on that. When I'm sitting here with these wet leaves and I'm drinking this, it just reinforces the heck out of what I'm tasting. And, you know, we've never really talked about what I'm going to say next. And I've never really thought to talk about much, but sometimes when Xiaobei and I are doing tastings for ourselves, we do leave the wet leaves right next to where we're tasting. We'll typically do two things. We'll take them out, we'll put them on a surface, a clean surface, obviously, that's close to us. We'll smell the cup, and then we'll go back down and keep smelling the leaves, because you're really right to look at this, because sometimes leaves start out a certain way, and then as time progresses, that changes. This also teaches you one very elementary thing that we talk about all the time, but that it's hard sometimes for people to really follow up on. And that is, when you brew a tea, like this, for example, you're drinking this thing, sweet, tangy, honey, berries, umami, chocolate. And you say, okay, oh, I love this stuff. I'm gonna put this away. It's 10 o'clock now. And at 3:15, I'm gonna have my second cup. Now I ask you this. When you smell the leaves at 3:15, are they gonna have this intensity? The answer is no, they're gonna be flat. We always give you the salad comparison. What is the salad comparison? You wake up at 6 in the morning, you love your greens first thing in the morning, you make a nice big bowl of salad, you eat it, you're feeling ready to attack the day, you've had fresh salad, but you couldn't finish it. So you leave it out, come back in at noon. Hey, some of these leaves are brown. I guess it's edible. Okay, you can actually eat it. But it's different, isn't it? And then if you leave it at night, it's almost inedible. Can't do it because there's a chemical process which occurs after you wet the leaves. And the quality of what you get as an output is less than what we're used to. Yes.
It's juicy, pleasurable, warming in the mouth with an underlying hint of dryness.
Quality arena time. Juicy. Hint of wetness. What was the other thing?
Pleasurable, warming in the mouth with underlying hint of dryness.
Oh, a warming underlying hint of dryness. Woo! I don't know how that wet, juicy somehow translated to wetness. And then I lost track there. So yes, a dryness, a pleasure in the mouth, and juicy.
For somebody else, as he check the leaves as they're cooling, he detects a sweetness. Perhaps that's what others are calling the stone fruit. And the scent evolves with time.
This great comment. Scent evolves with time. So, and this particular commentator is postulating stone fruit to sweetness. And, I like that movement that you're talking about because every single time you do a tea like this, it is about movement. So with cliff teas, where is the movement? It's in the tea liquor itself because at 200 degrees, you can only take an inhalation at the beginning and the cup needs to, gradually cool. And the movement in terms of ability to appreciate the tea occurs as you go down the cup. The movement in a red tea, because you're taking a bigger sip, a lot of that actually does occur as you're thinking about the leaves because everything's cooler. And so you're getting you're getting a cliff tea 10 minutes after it's made, right? So 10 minutes after it's made, the leaves are cooled down. You don't have to worry about sticking your nose in it. This you get right away because it's done at a cooler temperature. I always say, and now you're pulling this apart and understanding what I say, I always say red teas have more consistency. Now, is that an accurate statement? It's absolutely not accurate. But it's convenient to say because what I mean by that is that the aroma as well as the taste tends to be only a relatively narrow change from the top to the bottom. And this is what is different about these type of teas. And it's because of the cooler temperature. Think if you were the head of Starbucks. Oh, that's an ugly thought. Let's get that thought out of your head. Let's try another thought instead. Think if you go into a chain store and they make you a red tea. That's still an ugly thought too, but at least envision that. Why is their red tea automatically a problem? It's automatically a problem because they've done it at 205. 205 is hotter than the world. How can you taste anything at 205? And the answer is you cannot, because your tongue is cautious. You know, oh, just give me a little inhalation of that. Don't give me too much, because otherwise I'll punish you.
There's a flavor in this tea that is in umami. So much so I had to go smell some Marmite. It's definitely not Marmite, but it's round, smooth, and otherwise I'm not sure how to describe it.
So there is an umami-ness to this that's round and smooth, and the questioner really is wrestling with the same type of question that all of us wrestle when we do umami, because we're able to distinguish, yeah, this is umami, or a little briny, or a little sea action going on. We all are able to do that, but it's really, really hard to think of an everyday umami that we can compare this to. And frankly, I can't. I get the umami, particularly when you said ocean, because I get the ocean aspect of what's in here. But you know, you ask me, well, what common umami taste could I compare this to? I can't. I can't find the words. Now, if any of you can find the words, let me know, because remember, this is a two-way street. We learn from you also. And as every time we go through these sessions, it's really great because you guys know how to be within the guardrails, and you're creative within these guardrails, and it's great. And that's how we learn.
After a smooth swallow, this travels and warms my insides. Upper body warming specifically, and calming, question mark, a really powerful tea actually.
A powerful tea actually, because it's warming. There's the hint of calmingness to it, and it's particularly upper body warming. I will tell you, when I drink this tea, I also get a strong warming quality. And again, I get it in my hands. My hands, if you shook my hand now, you think, oh my God, you're on fire. Are you okay? And it's because of this tea. Because typically my hands are not that warm. But when I do a tea like this, yes, indeed, very warm.
Maybe it's more like a snap tea kind of umami, where it's sweet, but it has a crispness that's almost kind of salty.
You know, this is really interesting. And I have just learned something. A crispy, a feeling of the crispiness that you get from a snap pea with the slightest hint of saltiness to it, which again, I've always gotten with the ocean portion of that crispiness. I really like that. And what a vision. You have put this in my head in a way that I can actually reuse this. I'm not going to give credit, but I will reuse it, and I think usefully for people, because this is a great comment. All right. So we've done Splendor today. I was going through the process. I better complete the process. Otherwise, you're going to start off the next broadcast as, well, you left me hanging at rolling. What's going on? What goes on after rolling? What goes on during rolling? So remember, we withered, and we withered to the point that the farmer decides is the appropriate point. It's not a point I can define for you and you can take a note on, because we're not farmers. And the language that they would use is meaningless to us. It really is. I hear them describe these things. It's like, I'd have to live here and actually see this going on before I really understood that. So, but we know what's going on. What's going on is that the water content is decreasing in the leaves. They become pliable. We talked about the two types of withering, outdoors and indoors with compressed air. That's temperature controlled indoors. After the withering, they do rolling. Now you notice I sent you that picture of a bamboo cross-hatched area that you would roll on. So that cross-hatched is what breaks up the leaves. It doesn't break them up so much as it breaks them down. And they use hand motions. And again, you're talking to somebody whose hands just don't. I didn't grow up on a farm. I wish I had, because then my hands automatically would have known, oh, okay, I'll roll. And it's the right motion. Try as I may, it's never quite like the Chinese who've been doing this for years and years. It's never quite the result. But what are you doing when you roll? And are you using the same force throughout the roll? And so what you're doing is you're breaking down the cells of the tea leaves so that the oxidation can take place, and eventually what's going to happen is the essences can come to the top, so that you're trying to break down the cells of the leaves. Can you do this using a uniform motion? Well, the motion is basically uniform, but what is not is the force. So usually you do a little bit lighter in the beginning, and over time you increase the pressure, and at some point you're rolling hard, and then you back up and you're rolling less hard. So the machines that actually roll, and they have rolling machines, so they're like those cylinders that are grooved, that if you're trying to drill into a surface, you are used to seeing those things. Well, they have a top. You open the top to the cylinder, you put the tea leaves in, and then you set the pressure setting. And you keep adjusting that throughout. And at the end of the time, out comes this gloppy mess. That's not a nice thing to say. Out comes this gloppy grouping of tea leaves all together. And then they go through, oh, I get to use a big word, the de-agglomeration step. And what that is to actually pull the leaves apart. Because what happens, whether you're using hand or you're using a machine to the leaves, when you're rolling, you're building up energy, heat energy. And it gets, by the time it comes out, it's wet and grouped together and hot. You want to de-agglomerate so that it isn't as hot. Next step, you put it in an area, temperature control, and you let it oxidize. So you've broken down the leaf cells. The two oxidation enzymes start to go to work on the tea leaves. And really, oxidation is a fancy word for a chemical process to convert the catechins into something else. Oh, and what is that something else? More long words. Theaflavins, thearubicins, and theabronins. As we go through the reds, we're going to talk more about all three of those. I don't need to go into those today. Just realize it's a long word, so I'll find ways to say them over the next 2 weeks, many, many times. And then we'll have explanations for what those are and how they affect the taste and how they affect the way the tea moves through your body. All very important. Yes.
Can you share more about the chemical characteristics? I'm not sure whether the question, Jeremy, is about the chemical characteristics of the tea overall, or?
We'll share more in the coming weeks, because I'll break this down until all of you are going to say to yourselves, wait a minute, I signed up for tea class, not science class, not chemistry class. We'll break those down. And I'm trying to give you the outline first and give you details in small enough numbers that they make sense to you. So getting you introduced to the words today and then delving down in what for a tea drinker do those words mean, and why are they important, and are they the same by varietal? There are about 10,000 questions that if I allow my self-control to fade, we would be here until 2:30. You don't want that. So we're going to keep that confined, and next week we'll talk in detail about that. So at any rate, they lay it out. Sometimes they cover, sometimes they don't. Why? Because they're trying to control the process and speed of oxidation. Well, how does covering or not covering control that process? Remembering, oxidation is a bell-shaped process. At 32 degrees, you're getting zero oxidation. That's not true, but close enough. And at 88, 89 degrees, you're getting fastest oxidation. And at 150 degrees, oh, you're essentially not getting oxidation. So that they're trying to control the temperature and the speed of oxidation. These farmers oxidize anywhere. The fastest that I think we've ever seen is about 3 hours, 4 hours. Slowest is about 12 hours. And farmers are using their understanding of the varietals, understanding of what they've seen in the past to go ahead and make judgments. It's ready, it's not ready. They're forever digging their hand in the pile. They smell it. Oh, yeah, this smells ready. Boom, stop. After stopping, what do you have to do? Last 2 steps. You gotta dry the leaf out. So you use an oven. Usually the first time through, you use about 125 to 135 degrees. So it's a little bit hotter temperature, not hot by the standards of making chocolate chip cookies, but hot by handling tea leaves standards. And you do that for 15, 20 minutes, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter. So you do the initial, okay, let's stop oxidation now, or slow it way down. Let's continue to get the moisture out. And then you let it rest a little bit, not long, 15, 30 minutes. You re-roast. And you re-roast usually at a lower temperature yet, so that what you're trying to do is get the maximum aromatics out. If it is still too wet, if the leaves are too wet, and they shouldn't be if you're a good roaster, but say, you know, atmospheric conditions left a little bit too much water in, then you do a higher quick roast. And that's it. Sort, pack, and make money. That's the whole process of red tea. And in a nutshell, in Yunnan, most of this process is done by hand. In other places, in Anhui, they have big factories there. So a lot of it, not all, but a lot of it is done mechanically. Although in Anhui, they have 10 grades, right? Grade 1 through 10, 1 being the highest, 10 undrinkable. Oh, wait a minute. Not undrinkable. It's just 1 through 10. And then they have the secret grade, which is right on top. 特级, special grade. And that's the stuff we're always after. So next week we have an Anhui tea. So we'll learn more about that. We'll learn more about the chemical constituencies, or constituents, I should say, of the tea as it's going through the process. We'll learn about how these are related to catechins and why catechins end up being important. So there's a bunch of stuff I'm going to take you through from a chemistry standpoint, but I'm not going to put it all out there at once. So again, those of you who are concerned about, oh, let's not wander in too much of the chemistry, I'm not going to, but I'm going to give you enough so it's easy to digest. Yes?
2 comments. One is details and chem constituents very much appreciated when you fit them in, just saying. Second comment, noodles and trichomes at the bottom.
Oh, this is a great, both, well, thank you for the comment about details in chemistry. Appreciate that. You know, you're encouraging me, and that's not a good thing because I have a lot in here and could talk a lot. The other great comment was about the trichomes. I'm looking at this. Yeah, there's a lot of trichomes on this one. So that's something, it's not easy to pick up on the dry leaves unless you're really into it. You know, some of the dry leaves for some teas, I mean, you can be a mile away. Wow, that's got a lot of trichomes on it. But for these, it's a little harder to spot, but it's always easy to spot at the bottom of the cup. As usual, great commentary. We love doing the red tea grouping like this. And actually what we're finding is that these groupings are working out really well in terms of helping you understand a range of what's possible within the category. And we're really, really appreciating your attention and your commentary. So have a great week, stay safe, and we'll see you next week at the Pinnacle session. Bye-bye now.